I got very excited when I saw this spotted moray eel hanging out in the shallows. Sadly, when I got closer, I noticed it had fishing line coming out of its mouth that appeared to be tangled in some sea rods, so it was stuck. Fortunately, Leslie and I carry scissors for general reef cleanup anyway, so I took them out, moved in gently, and cut the line as close to its mouth as I could. After it cleared the area, I picked up the rest of the fishing line. We're not sure how well it fared, given the trauma and remaining fishing line in its belly, but at least it had a fighting chance. As usual, we'll start with our first-time captures, and there was quite an assortment in May. This little guy stumped us for a bit. We didn't recognize it right away, although it had some signs of being a triggerfish. It turned out to be a post-larval queen triggerfish, and by far the youngest one we've ever seen. Another new fish for us was this two-spot cardinalfish, which was taking refuge inside a tire in the shallows. In the non-fish category, we recognized this as a corallimorph, but we weren't sure what kind. After a bit of research, it looked like an umbrella corallimorph. Actually, there were two. This is the first one, but it was in a harder spot to video. We noticed this shell in a small hole on the reef. It was unlike anything we've seen in the Caribbean, and it wasn't in any of the typical ID resources we use, so we asked around. It appears to be an Atlantic giant cockle, which live along the western Atlantic coast of North America and in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Caribbean. We were very lucky to see this moon snail, given its coloring against the sandy bottom, because it didn't stay around long and started to bury itself when we came by. Still, it was definitely one of our favorites from May. Slow and steady examination of the reef paid off on one of our night dives as these two Cuban aglajas were crawling over a dead coral head. Luckily, I had my macro lens, so I was able to get close-up shots, because these guys could not have been more than a couple of millimeters in length. We have captured chains of salps before, but this is our first shot of a single salp. Per Wikipedia, the solitary life history phase, also known as the oozoid, is a single barrel-shaped animal that reproduces asexually by producing a chain of tens to hundreds of individuals, which are released from the parent at a small size. So cool! We'll close the first-time captures out with this odd worm. We weren't able to determine what kind it was, and we've shared it a number of places, but have received conflicting suggestions. If you can point us in the right direction, please leave a comment below. Although we've been to the downtown sites numerous times, the fire coral growth on the large cement mooring blocks caught our attention recently. On many of those blocks, the fire coral extends out from the corners and grows fairly evenly along the two sides, which sort of makes them look like underwater Rorschach tests. Speaking of those large cement blocks, they can be a haven for sea life. It's easy to see the larger things swimming around, but those big squares are actually apartment buildings, specifically high-rises for blennies. The penthouse of this one had over 30 blennies popping out of holes, grabbing food, drifting by with the current. This bright purple club-tipped anemone caught my eye in the crack between rocks on a night dive. As I moved in for a closer look, several bloodworms that were attracted by my lights came by. One got a bit too close and was caught by the anemone, which quickly closed for a nice meal. You're welcome. So, this is kind of a long clip. We were watching a couple of snails cross the sand on a night dive, but then it started looking like a pursuit. The smaller one overtook the larger one, and both plunged into the sand. We couldn't see what was going on, and thought perhaps there was an attack. Eventually, the smaller one popped its proboscis up and began crawling away. Shortly after that, the second one popped up as well. So perhaps it was just a friendly, albeit rough greeting, or something a bit more intimate. By the way, here is one of them close up. I spotted this peacock flounder following a shamefaced heart crab, and I thought that might be a chase as well. It turned out to be a hunting party, with the flounder trying to catch smaller things the box crab flushed out. Keep your eye on this area. As the box crab crosses, a smaller crab gets scared, and the flounder raises its head to get a better look. It maintains that height as it tracks the smaller crab and sets up for an attack. Sadly for the flounder, but happily for the crab, it was a miss, and the flounder caught up with the box crab for the next opportunity. Apparently, this goby discovered a buffet of tasty morsels in the sand, and was methodically digging a trench to harvest all it could. After enjoying a few bites, it would excavate a little further, sifting through the sand for more food. This Spanish hogfish was eating something stringy, and it seemed to be having a problem chewing. Every so often, the hogfish would spit out whatever it was a few times to try and get a better positioning in its mouth. Eventually, it was able to swallow and continue on its journey. On the swim back across the shallows at the end of a night dive, we ran across a number of southern lugworm burrows. They look like mini volcanoes and gave us the same feeling as we have on the 4th of July, as all of the eruptions reminded us of fireworks. By the way, those lugworms are expelling all the leftover organic material they ingested but weren't able to absorb. I thought this balloonfish taking refuge in a sponge was kind of cool, and didn't really notice the trumpetfish. That is, until I was filming for a while and the trumpetfish swam by to check me out. I filmed the balloonfish a little more, and out of the corner of my eye, saw the trumpetfish had parked right next to my camera float. After some time, I panned up to show just how close it was, and it very slowly swam away, but not too fast that I couldn't follow it for a while. Approaching shrimp goby combinations in the shallows takes patience, but it's worth it. We've shown this before and are highlighting it again because A, they're fun to watch, and B, you can see this activity all throughout the year. Just take it slow over these sandy shallows on your way back to shore. We see murex all the time, but they're usually just lying at the bottom somewhere or attached to a rock or a coral head. There's really not much to see there, although the shells are kind of intricate. This was the first time we've seen one crawling around. As you might expect, they move more like a conch than a snail, which was interesting. And since we mentioned conchs, we'll close out the behavior section with this queen conch in a fairly dense part of the reef, eating algae like it was spaghetti. The uncommon animal section is chock full of extraordinary sea life as well. Leading the way is a web burrfish we saw swimming in the shallows. Those spikes, which do look intimidating, stand straight at all times, unlike porcupine fish, where they lie flat against the skin unless it puffs up in a defensive posture. We don't catch spiny brittle stars very often because they hate our lights. We did, however, manage to get one as it crawled away on a night dive. One morning, we found this juvenile jackknife fish struggling with the current. Well, it looks to be struggling with the current because it was so small and its tail was not fully grown. In case you're interested, one of the markers to look for is a straighter dorsal fin. Juvenile spotted drum dorsal fins are much longer and curve back toward the tail. We only see Atlantic thorny oysters a couple of times a year. I guess we could see them more if we actually remembered where they were, because they don't move that much. Anyway, we hung around this one to see it open and close a few times. We shared a flying gurnard we saw on Curacao a couple of months ago, and we saw one this month here on Bonaire as well. We also saw one, or perhaps it was the same one, at a different downtown site. So keep your eyes peeled when swimming over the shallows in Krylendijk. It wouldn't be a highlight section if we didn't show off a few seahorses. Truth be told, there are a number of them on Bonaire at a few specific sites. We encourage anyone visiting to check with and/or hire a local guide to dive the most recent locations and get some personal one-on-one time with some amazing sea life. Local dive guides also know where the froggies are. Yolanda from Go With Yo Diving showed us a very nice white and black long lure frogfish. Actually, the white was just starting to turn yellow. Fun fact: color transitions in frogfish can take days or even weeks. We also spent some time with another pair of frogfish we're aware of that has been around for quite a while now. Sometimes they hide in the crevices, but on this occasion they were loud and proud on full display. These are known colloquially as lettuce slugs. The name comes from the fact that they frequently have green coloring, and the tops have lots of ruffles, like the tops of green lettuce leaves. So you can imagine our delight to see this very small juvenile crawling across a coral head. I mean, it's only got like 10 ruffles. I wonder if they start out with just one when they're born. Sometimes, just noticing something looks different is all it takes to find an animal. The white spot on this convoluted barrel sponge caught our eye, and when we moved in for a closer look, we noticed it was a decorator crab. Clearly, all that camouflage worked, because we almost missed it. This one is called a sponge decorator crab, because they top themselves with small pieces of sponge in order to blend in with the reef, which really just made this one stand out in the sandy shallows. On the other hand, this decorator crab was incredibly hard to spot. Had we not caught the slightest of movements, we never would have stopped. It's unbelievable how well they can blend in. And for the second month in a row, we were fortunate to see not one, but two music volutes. Both were crawling along the drop-off, not far from each other, and they stuck around for a while, which gave me time to swap in the +15 close-up lens. What a great way to spend an afternoon. So, those were the most exciting encounters we had underwater in May. There were a few longer clips. Sometimes we just stay on something for a few minutes to see what happens. Let us know if you like those or thought they were a bit too long. Other feedback we would enjoy include clicking the subscribe button, liking and/or sharing the video. We're just on the cusp of 3,000 subscribers, so you can help us reach that. Actually, 4,000 is the next milestone, because then we can say we have thousands and thousands of subscribers. Tell your friends about us. Thanks! Smiley face.